You're listening to Cassandra
and Jennifer with Authentically Woo Woo,
where we talk about spirituality, cosmos, balance, and living authentically.
Episode 2. What's up with the penguins? Today's episode, we talk about penguins, soul contracts, and we briefly touch base about the Akashic records. So, what is up with the penguins? Our name, our logo, everything has these penguins on it, and I'm sure people are like, oh, okay.
Where's that coming from?
What is that?
Especially because you're a unicorn person, I'm cat person.
Exactly.
So where's penguins?
What, now penguins? Like, are these adults? What is this? So today we're going to talk about what is up with the penguins. But before we do, we're going to talk about the Akashic records. But hold on, before we do, so in my head, I always say Akashic records.
So do I.
Do you?
Yeah. Akashic records.
Yeah, but
I think that's how I say it.
But there's a lot of people that say like Akashic, but like
Akashic.
Yeah, that's like so that's like I'm always like Akashic. So
I think
Cassandra, tell me.
I'm an Akashic person too.
That
Yeah,
makes my heart so happy. Okay, all right, because like I know that like we listen to similar people,
yeah.
and they say Akashic, and I'm like.
Yeah, I think I'm Akashic records.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm Akashic too.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, all right, now that we have
problem
that
solved, we can continue now.
We can continue. So Cassandra, tell me about the Akashic records.
So basically, the simple way I like to think of it is kind of like the book of life. You know, I know we've all heard of that saying before. But, you know, the definition that I kind of held on to here is that the Akashic records are the collection of all universal events, thoughts, words, emotions, and intent ever to have occurred in the past, present, or future in terms of all entities and life forms. So, and I know when I first kind of heard of this, my brain was like, wait, what? But going back to some of the things that we're talking today, it's like when you do have a reading done and stuff comes up and, this, you've not told this person anything. And now all of a sudden they're saying these things and they're like, oh my gosh, how, do you know that? So it's pretty neat. And how do you get Akashic record reading? So basically there are some readers who are trained intuitive readers that can go into your records. And so, yeah, I think, I know that's a lot of where the penguin stuff came from was actually Kayla, who is an Akashic record reader. And Jen and I
we both did a reading with her. And so along with like the Akashic records, like I love how you describe it as a book of life type thing. How like in my brain I've viewed it as like a really big library because I love libraries. Yeah. And like back in the day when you had the Dewey Decimal System and like you had the joy that would pull out and you're like going through the files, like in my brain that's how I envision this big beautiful like archaic library with these just big long drawers, and each drawer is like our soul. Yeah. And it has all these things. And so Cassandra introduced me to Kayla, and she offered soul contract readings. Now, your soul contracts are like your contract, your agreement with your soul team whenever you come to the earth for this lifetime, and you're like, okay, this is what I want to learn or whatever. So we'll talk about that later. But just to give base, so I did a soul contract reading with Kayla, and I was able to choose 5 people, and one of my 5 people, of course, was Cassandra.
That's
and and so and it was this beautiful reading. Like she came back and she when she was describing it, she was like, it's so funny. She's like, you guys are like, you're each other's penguin. And she's like, you've been in so many lives together, which I think really sort of kind of defines like how we just instantly clicked.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
And
she used the example of, she says it's not in that sense, but she says
like
kind of like,
yeah.
kind of like penguins like mate for life, or they're, together. And yeah.
Yeah. Like how, so like we're like always in each other's like lifetimes together, or at least in a lot of them. And we're each other's person. And so I was like, oh, she's my penguin. And she was like, and it was hilarious because she was like, I really think of you girls as, and she doesn't know us, which is like, so she doesn't know our friendship. She doesn't know anything about us other than our names.
She knows about us now, but at the time,
at the time she didn't.
She got a kick out of it after the fact.
She was like, you guys like just remind me of these two like hippie babes that are like these soul sisters going through lifetimes. And so whenever Cassandra and I talked about doing the podcast, we were like, what should we do as our logo?
Yeah.
And because I'm the unicorn, like that's literally my business logo. Cassandra is the crazy cat lady.
Yeah. All about.
I mean, not crazy, just.
No, crazy. I'll claim it. I'll take it. Yeah.
So we were like, okay, well, penguins, is that like cool? And
what do we do? What do we do with penguins? Yeah.
What's up with the penguins? And so we talked about it, and it was funny because like we went back and forth on the podcast
a few days, like for name and just the details. Like we had in mind what we wanted the essence to be.
Yeah.
That part was easy, but it was like the name and like the little pulling it all together. We really sat on it for a while.
Yeah. So we were like looking for like all of these like signs and symbols and everything too. And because that's who we are. Yeah. And we're like, universe, do you like this name? All right, I don't see anything. And so we had come across, so like we finally like picked a name, and we were like, do we use penguins? And we're like, yeah, like why not? Because that's authentically us as a penguin. So Cassandra and I were on the phone and we're talking, and I go to pick up a book, and when I pick up the book, it was just something to read later on. And so when I pick it up and I open it, it was on literally it opened up to freaking penguins, and it was the penguin spirit animal. And so I was like, Cassandra, you're not going to believe this. And
yeah, because I was talking and you're like, I don't mean to be rude, but can you stop talking? I gotta tell you this.
And I was like, this is our sign. This is our absolute sign. I'm like, I just picked up this book, freaking opened it, and it's got penguins on it. And it talks all about penguins and how they work together as like a community and to help the community. What do we want to do?
Yeah.
We want to come together to help talk about spirituality, to help talk about all these different facets, to help raise the vibrations of the world, to help our community, because our community needs it.
Yeah.
And so we're penguins.
There you have it.
And so yeah. So that was. Do you have anything to the penguin story?
No, I think that's I think that was definitely good. And then, and the name came together pretty well. Once it finally came together.
Yeah, it was one of those things that clicked as well.
Yeah, it was like we kept going back and forth, and then it was just like,
well, that's it.
Yeah. Okay. And then we see penguins, and then we have it. So here we are. Authentically Woo Woo. Aww.
And that's another thing that like we always say.
Yeah.
It's like, aww. And
I wonder how many times we could do that before it's annoying.
I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
That was like, I love like acronyms and alliterations.
Yeah.
And Cassandra's like, all right, it has to have authentic in it.
Yeah, that was important for me. But I didn't want it to be overly spiritual either. I wanted it to be relatable and kind of lighthearted and
I'm like, I absolutely love the authentic part. And so then we're like, you know, we played with all of the spirituality names, and we always call like our stuff like it's woo woo. It's it's woo woo. And so we're like, Authentically Woo Woo.
Yeah.
And
it's funny, once my brother was visiting and I was like, I needed to go to my woo woo store. I was like, do you mind if I go to my woo woo store? And he was like, he looked at me, he was like, what on earth did you just say to me? I was like, my woo woo store.
Yeah.
And he was like, I don't know what you're talking about. So it's a metaphysical store. Oh, okay. Has crystals. Oh, right.
You know, woo woo.
Woo. I mean, I knew what I was saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I know what you were saying too.
Sorry, I just threw my brother under the bus. Sorry, Brandon. So, but yeah, the other thing when we did that came up with the reading, and I know I had done a reading with Kayla too. And my reading, I didn't do the soul contract, and I know yours was, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but I know mine was just talking about like just an overall, you know, talked about starseed, you know, soul origin, which we'll talk about all that stuff later down the road. But for me, it talked about like my gifts that I have, and it brought up your gifts and your reading as well. And I noticed that was in her reading, like a similarity we had as far as like light workers sort of feel to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, okay, so what is a light worker? A light worker is a person that, again, wants to be that penguin for the community, wants to raise those vibrations. And so a light worker is someone that is always like going to spread positivity and love, and they're just one of those people that like you want to be around because you feel good around them.
Yeah.
And typically like a light worker has been through some sort of trauma that they've overcome or are overcoming, usually like on the higher end of it. We're still in our human bodies, right? So we're still learning constantly. That's the whole purpose of life. But a light worker is like one of those people that like wants to raise the vibrations, and they're extremely important within our world, and especially in times like this of where it's just a lot of negativity, being spun in every direction constantly around you.
I remember too when we did the readings, when she talked about this stuff, you know, it was kind of had this element of like, well, what do you do? Well, you do you authentically, and by doing you authentically, you know, keeping these things in mind, that you know, just instantly kind of really helps, you know, and that tied in with that kind of light worker vibe, being authentic, you know, in that element. So I know that was also something in our readings that we both, that fit with it, we both had.
Living your authentic life. And I think before, like we talked about in episode 1 about how we are so easily caught up in this unbalance, and or that like we have this ideology of what life is supposed to be like, what you know, like just like how things are supposed to be. Well, you're supposed to have 9 to 5, or you're supposed to have this career that is, you know, work, and and it's not like that lowers us, right? Like what is it that you do that makes your heart happy? Like that is what you should be focused on. And you know, your gift, it goes back to the gifts of like, what can I use my gifts to help my community, to help my family, and all of that. So the light workers living your authentic life, being a penguin. So that is how we came up with the name and the logo. And then Cassandra, you designed this amazing logo that is super cute.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yes, I do like to play, dabble around every now and then with things digitally dabbling.
Which is funny because like back in the day, that's what you did. Like that's like what you started out with, right?
Yeah, so long ago. Yeah, one of the earlier elements of my journey, teaching myself Photoshop and doing a lot of stuff that it's still sold to this day under someone bought the rights to it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I was like, you can have it. I'm good, you know. And you can still find it. They still sell it. Yeah.
That's amazing. So she like, so to like just expand on that for a minute. You created these like digital pieces that people would use for scrapbooking and
mixed media art, cart. Okay. I mean, they've been used in like so many different forms and stuff, but basically it's just, collections of, I enjoyed awesome. On our Instagram we posted, and that's a little plug there. If you're not following us on Instagram, follow us on Instagram, Authentically Woo Woo. So there we try to post stuff about, metaphysical topics, just overall feel good. She's the wordy person. She likes all the words. I'm like, you know the things and and she's like, well, this is, so the mantras. She's like, Cassandra, we have to have mantras. I'm like, okay, we'll have mantras. And penguin facts. Yeah, and so penguin fun facts. Mm-hmm. So a couple of the images there, I have fun. Designing, so it all tied in there. That conversation piece tied in, I promise.
It did. Well, and like that's like one of the beauty of the things, right? Like, so we're using all of our talents. I am a very wordy person.
Yeah,
that's a talent, right?
That is a talent, because I am not. I'm like so lazy. I've gotten to where when I write things, I just like haven't been even capitalizing. This is, just you get the words, Yeah, and you're definitely, that's a gift. So pictures, words, someday, some sort of
something.
Never know.
Never know.
In deck form.
Yes, right? All sorts of fun things.
Possibly.
So definitely check out our Instagram at Authentically Woo Woo, and that is WOOWOO. And
you did that too perfect.
I did I? Where we put the woo and woo woo now.
Oh my gosh.
So that's how we came up with the logo and everything, where you and I are both living authentically by using our talents of you designing these. So it's like, what's funny is that like you create these beautiful like pictures, like spreads, and I find it amusing because I'm a photographer, but like I have such a hard time doing that.
Really?
Whereas like you will be like, put this here. And this here. Let's sprinkle some magic. And then you're like, and you take it. I'm like, that's amazing. Like that is perfect. And so definitely trying to tie in like both of our gifts and to create this community space of light and love. Okay, so contracts.
Yes, we did say we were going to talk about soul contracts.
Yes. So soul contracts. I feel like I've been really wordy. Do you want me to still talk about soul contracts?
That is all you.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, how many years ago? Like way before any,
Any woo on your part?
Any woo woo. No woo woo. I tend to be very logical and like, really, but I've always listened to everything. And the cafeteria story you share about soul contracts, and maybe if you'll be lucky, she will share it with you today.
The table? Is that what the table?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So soul contracts, so it's like you have your soul team, your people that you reincarnate with. These are my beliefs. That you have this team of people that you reincarnate with, and like sometimes you're the mom, sometimes you're the dad. Like our souls don't have a a male female, like they can be either, and so like I said, like, so it's different lifetimes we play different roles. And we gather because as women we're going to gather information, and our soul's going to grow different ways from being a woman than being a man, and
right.
especially in different like cultures and just depending on different timelines. I mean, 100 years ago we weren't able to vote, or a little over 100 years ago. So all of those things, our soul contracts are our core people. And how I think of it is that like we sit around a table and we're in this like cafeteria, like that's cool.
Yeah, I swear that's what you said. Like picture being in a cafeteria and there's a table here and a table there and a table.
I don't know. Maybe I have.
It's been years.
So.
I've heard, so maybe like my, but that's.
I like that. I that makes much more sense than like in my brain of it was just like, a table.
Why were all these tables here?
Yeah. So cafeteria. I like that.
Cafeteria.
No, I love that.
Yeah.
So cafeteria, and you have your table. And so like your like core group is at your table. So think about like, I don't know, depending on your lifetime. Like, so like I would say, like my husband and my kids. And then you have like your other like close core tables like next to you. And then you have like even like not so like, I don't know, like the tables that are like way over like here or whatever. And so you're sitting around your table and you're like, all right, you know what? Last time, like I was an ass. And I want to learn not to be an ass this lifetime. Or like, I don't know, like something. And you're like, I really want you to teach me humility or teach me integrity. And like, that's what I want to learn this lifetime. So then like your other soul person would be like, I think I can definitely help you with that. We'll create some sort of like scenario or whatever, but I really would need help with this other like situation to help me grow. And so you guys are kind of like agree of, all right, well, we're gonna do this, and then say, oh, you know what, like I feel like I need to have more compassion for a certain situation, and I always felt this way about this situation, but maybe I need to have more compassion to that. So like perhaps that situation could come to me, and then this like Joe Schmo over here is like, oh, hey, you want to learn? I can like briefly pop into your life and help you learn about that, and then you'll help me at the same time, because then I'll learn the effects of like type thing, and
type things like, I'll go mess your life up. I'll help you with that.
Really bad. And you'll have to like really figure it out. And at the same time, like I'll learn like, oh gosh, maybe I should be more responsible. And
strap your load.
What? Secure your loads? I don't know. So where I was going with that is, we talked about last episode, I was in a bad car accident, and I know that like that was supposed to happen. Do we have free will? Yes. Like absolutely. But I think that kind of like no matter what, if you're supposed to have a pivotal moment within your life, like something's going to happen to create a scenario for that to happen. Whether or not it's supposed to be that specific, or if it's just something similar that has this...
It can be like pre-arranged whole contract, or it can be sometimes something where someone's exercising their own free will, to cause. But I think a lot of times the major pivotal things are absolutely,
hey, this is what's going to happen.
Soul contract, and they bring about, they're the necessary step to bring about, and I know you felt, the difference in your life on how that brought you through the different things. I know you've talked a lot about that, overcoming certain things and looking at yourself differently, looking at your relationships differently, and all of that came from
so from this accident, which we'll call it an accident, but from this predestined moment that I am truly grateful for. It was really hard. I'm at a place 5 years later
where I can say that.
Even at the moment, I was like, okay, I know something is going to come from this, and that was the only thing that really kept me going. Because there were so many days of where I'm like, this fucking sucks. Like, this sucks. It's just so hard. But so when I was at my table with my core group, and I was like, you know what, like, I don't know whether or not it was, I don't know what the specific lesson was, except for maybe, hey, slow down a little bit. And I mean, there's been so many things that have come from it.
There's been come from it.
So like,
it changed your health.
Oh, absolutely.
It changed your home life. It changed your perspective of yourself. It changed your work. It changed so many things.
So, like everything. Yeah. And so I think when I was at my table,
that was your Saturn return.
And it was my Saturn return.
That's my astrology. When you talk about it, different things with that, I'm like, oh, but there's an astrology element to that. There's astrology. We'll get into all of that later.
Yes.
Because
that'll be like an episode.
Yeah, schmay. Yeah. But yeah.
So I was at my table, and I was like, this is like a lesson that I really need to learn. And so I learned a lot of it with my core group, right? But I needed there to be an outside
influence.
Yes, exactly. And so, this guy over here was like, hey, I can help with that. And I was like, okay, cool. Sounds good. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, I can come from a place of, like, where I have no ill will, no bad feelings, no nothing. Like, that was something that needed to happen so that it could present the change of where I am now. Did it suck? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it did. It did. But then I'm always like, well, you know what? In a way, I asked for it. Because my soul wanted to learn a lesson there. And
I personally, and I know everybody has their own thoughts, opinions, perspectives. I have found a lot of peace in my life with this concept, because and this kind of goes back to, and this ties in, I promise, but it kind of goes back to my belief system of I lost my train of thought.
Belief system of sponsors, and we will be right back.
I'm so sorry.
Welcome to the DW World History Series. I'm your host, David Wainwright, and I'll be taking you through 3,000 years of Egyptian history, beginning with King Narmer and ending with the last native Egyptian ruler, Nekhtenebet II, in 343 BC. If you follow our video series, you experience one of the most detailed presentations on this great civilization. A podcast series is available for download at dwworldhistory.com. Here you will also find detailed outlines for each episode, with additional resource material, maps, and bibliographies. Please remember to like us on Facebook and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. And now, join us as we take you through the world of history.
Okay, so,
So we were talking about soul contracts, and then we were talking about you and your soul contracts, and
yes.
did we talk about Shmishmission?
I'm not sure what Shmishmission is, but
sounds like collision.
So I think I get where you're going.
Yeah, okay.
But
okay.
So I did, we'll just kind of jump back up to Kayla. Kayla, thank you for everything. We're going to have to tag all of her stuff. This, we should have added her name to the top. It's like, Kayla. So I did, after Jen ended up doing her soul contracts reading, I was definitely intrigued.
Oh, that's what we were talking about. We were talking about how like our soul contracts have yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did a reading with her and did soul contracts, but I was like, I couldn't narrow it down to 5 people. So I did 10. And like I said, this was definitely towards the beginning era of like my spiritual awakening and my mind opening up to things. And I just remember getting it and it just being so crazy, you know, once again, going back to how accurate it was. And we were talking about like your experience and how, you know, the soul contract to bring forth some sort of change or bring forth some sort of something. And so in getting my readings and learning more and hearing the things, first off, my mind was like blown because the accuracy was just spot on. And I know for me, you know, we talk about the soul contracts and the change and stuff, and I try to not over spiritualize things, you know, and I kind of have my own little logic and thought where I'm comfortable with, but basically I look at it, and so my personal opinion is in soul contracts going into this ties into a little bit of incarnation, and you know I know a lot of that we'll talk about as we go, but basically anytime you have something that happens in your life, like you had the hay bale circumstance or whatever, whether you believe the situation. Hi, I said it. I spoke Jen. Did you hear it?
I did. I'm proud.
Yeah. And so basically it's like, you know, some people are like soul contracts, you know, but here's how I look at it is at the end of the day, I believe in God as a creator, and I believe that, you know, the ultimate goal and plan for us is, you know, a sense of more enlightenment and wholeness. Like, I think of it, I don't know, I picture it like the Garden of Eden, before things like just oneness with the earth, oneness with one another, you know, high vibrational love, compassion, care, you know, so I think I don't put God in a box. I think he's down with reincarnation, you know, in the sense of like, because what are we doing? What is reincarnation? It's you know, getting, like you said, this lifetime, I want to work on this or that, or gather those things that help us. And at the end of the day, when bad crap happens to you, you can either say, blame it on God. And what does that lead to? I mean, can you think of anyone in a situation where they're like, this happened, they get angry and they blame it on God, or they blame it on this person or that person. But what does that lead to? More anger, more frustration, more questions. But if someone says, what you went through absolutely sucks. And that's not what we're saying. We're not saying, oh, you brought this upon yourself.
Oh, yeah. No.
You know?
No.
But what we are saying is this, is when things like that happen, if you look at it from a stance of, okay, what was it I'm wanting to learn? What, you know, when you
from
look
that higher
at it,
perspective.
Exactly. When you look at it as, you know, you look at the soul contract or I'll be honest, I did not have good conclusions with my contracts with my parents. I did not. How that was intended to go, it did not go as intended. And that I can see the things that were shared to me, it was just like someone was a fly on the wall in my upbringing because it was that accurate. And so my logical mind, first off, is like, wow, you know, if for me, I know a lot of my journey is like, I feel like I picture my spirit guides laughing at me because they're like, we don't tell Cassandra once. We have to tell her like 5 gazillion times through 50 different people and then she'll get it. So I feel like I've got the most patient spirit guides ever. I mean, you were with me how many years? Like dropping seeds. So Jen was like one of them, but I'm like, okay, but you know, but when I started to hear the same things over and over from various, and I know we talked about this in one of our other videos, no matter where you're looking, whether it's astrology, whether it's an Akashic reading, you know, the information was the same. So here I am getting this reading and I'm like, okay, you know, this happened. And so many of my years have felt wanting to feel loved, wanting to feel accepted, wanting to feel, you know, seeking that validation, not having it within. And I know a big part of my healing came from looking at the soul contract and saying, okay, what are you going to do? Are you going to blame other people? Are you going to, but let's say maybe this happened because maybe I wanted to learn a particular lesson. If this wouldn't have happened, would I be here? If that wouldn't have happened, would you be there? And for me, a big part of my healing came from that. It came from looking at, you know, soul contracts and reincarnation from this perspective of there's no one to blame necessarily in this. And, you know, and what are you going to do with it? You know, I chose to start telling myself after so many years feeling hurt by it, I started to say, I'm not the victim. You know, and not to say, you have to take even a tiniest little fraction of a different perspective away from that. You know, I had to look at it as, maybe this was a soul contract, a circumstance where I was meant to learn something else. You know, it's easy to blame the other person. It's easy to constantly be fixated on the why this happened. But when you just take a step back and kind of look at it as, you know, this perspective coming from more of a soul contract, you know, wanting to grow, wanting to learn, wanting to evolve, you know, it kind of takes a lot of that out. And for me, I found a lot of comfort, actually. I found a lot of love in it. I found like a lot of being able to finally move on. And I mean, and what is all that? It's like a domino effect. Once you start that, you know, builds self-confidence. It builds, you know, how dare you?
I'm so sorry.
My gosh.
I just like there's like a frog in my throat. Sorry.
But yeah, it just, you know, that one thing changed so much in my life. It just
changing that perspective.
Yes.
That perception of like how you were talking about of being like the victim of whenever you can. So we have all been victimized at one point in time within our lifetimes, and it's whether or not you stay in that victimized situation Or
I love it. Situation. Word of the day.
Situation. So whether or not you stay in that box, that victim box, and you say, well, this is what happened to me. Like, I guess I can't move on because how could I? Like, this is what happened to me. You talked about being mad at God, and like at my lowest low, so like the accident, the situation wrecked me. And like my body, and I had to have like spinal surgery, and it's like all these things, and then
scary spinal surgery.
Yeah,
like,
that didn't.
Like I remember you talking to me, be like, Cassandra, there's quite a real possibility. They're saying that what was it? I'm not good. She's the medical term people. The querpicipicembligic summasnachnas.
Yes, yeah, it was scary. Like it was at C5 C6. Disc was halfway through my spinal cord. Like the surgeon. She was, and that's another thing is that like I'm like a rabbit of where my symptoms don't present outwardly, and so if I'm like, wow, I've got a really bad headache, like you're like,
it's pretty bad.
You're like, oh, sure you do. You said that really well, and it's like on the inside though, it's like I can't even think. Like I've got a really bad headache, and I remember like one of the things was I have weird genetic stuff, so I'm super bendy, and so they're like, oh, your range of motion is perfect, like you're fine. I'm like, no, my range of motion is not good. It's not up to par of what it should be, and I'm having these really blinding headaches, and so many doctors were like,
you didn't feel like you were
and heard, and so but then they would look at my MRI, and they were like, oh my God, what are you doing? Like
you shouldn't be moving.
Yeah, we need to put you in a bubble. And I'm like, this is what I've been saying. and so all right, so I'm getting sidetracked. But so anyways, if you stay in that though, and so like at my lowest low, I think was actually after surgery, and I was still in so much pain, and that was supposed to like help me.
Yeah.
And I was in so much pain, and then like shit just kept getting worse and snowballing. And then that goes into like the whole law of attraction too.
Yeah.
And so that whole victimization is like, why is this happening to me? And the universe hears, oh, bad shit's happening to you?
Okay.
Oh, okay, yeah, bad shit happens to you. And then it's like more things that are horrible happen.
I can't wait to talk about energy. Sorry.
So then you get stuck in the box. But if you, and just like how, like in religions and most of us like put God in a box, and we have all these nice little tidy boxes for everything of our ideologies that we have, but I think the soul contracts are kind of like opens that up, and then is like, wait though, don't like come on, like don't stay in the box. There's this whole big beautiful world. There's all of this stuff to learn.
So many people are still in
the box. And you got to get out of the box. And so, and when you come out of the box, that's when the healing comes into play. And of where you're saying, like you, and I know like I had previously said, like I always knew that there was some greater, like I even remember talking to a mutual friend of ours, Jessie, and she was like, and it was really sweet. And she was like, it's so inspiring to hear you say that, there's something that's going to come from this. And that was like always my thought. It has to be something to come from this. And there's been so much wonderful things that have come from it. So getting out of that and looking at the soul contracts, when I realized when I was sitting at my table with my core team, and Mr. Hayroll over there was like, hey, I'll help you with that. And then in return, I hope that I helped him with something. Yeah. Like, I hope whatever it was, whatever lesson that he needed to learn, I hope that it was definitely a mutual learning lesson at that point. And so, like, it was hard. I had a lot of anger towards him. Yeah. But that's the human side of us, right? Right. But like how you were saying, once you look at it from a soul contract and you can see that it was done from love, because everything that is from heaven, from whatever that
source, divine, God, whatever
you want to call it, is nothing but love.
Right.
And so you're talking...
I think a lot of people miss that.
Yes.
I think a lot of people...
Well, and it's okay. So whenever you learned about soul contracts and you looked into your raising, and like it helped you once you learned that perspective.
Yeah.
And so, do you want to talk about, like, totally up to you.
Talk more about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel like talking about that, we're going to take a deep dive.
Okay.
So deep dive, here we go. This is where the being authentic part comes in for me. Here we go. Authenticity at its finest.
Do you want me to talk about Kat first? About my contract with Kat?
If it's on your mind, but I'm fine talking. I just had to gather my thoughts there for a minute.
Okay. Are you gathered?
I'm gathered.
Okay. All right. Let's hear it.
Okay. So one of the hard things, coming from the upbringing that I did, it's hard. I say this really quick. I don't know if it's necessary, but for me, it's necessary. I always, but goes back to conditioning. I know it's all in my head and I'm trying to get it out. So I always felt like I didn't have it. Like, it's not like I had the absolute worst story. Mm-hmm. I think that it was not a good story. Absolutely. But I felt like I was caught up in my life for so long saying, this story isn't bad, Cassandra. Just get it together. You need to just get yourself together. This story is not a terrible story, but it was a rough story. It was a very rough story. Well, fighting against it instead of, and that's one thing when we go talking about light and shadow and we talk about being happy and stuff like that, and light worker in this episode, but there's also a point to that too, where it is important to address your shadows, and we'll talk more about that. But in general, instead, I just kept pushing it down. Mm-hmm. No, just this or that. And it caused a lot of dysfunction in me. It caused me to enter the world with a lot of problems, starting off. So always tried to seek approval. Unfortunately, despite my efforts, I just didn't have support at home and didn't have, when I came out, it did cause some strife between me and my husband, and we almost got divorced. And I still remember when I went to therapy, counseling, we went just because we were thinking at the time, this is it. We're just going to let someone else make this decision for us. Mm-hmm. That was that. I just remember feeling like my mind was out of control all the time. Like I couldn't sort my thoughts. All the dysfunction in that. Well, during that time, it was the first moment where I had asked my parents for space, and as a result of that, I was disowned. There was a lot of dysfunction there. They've had challenging upbringings themselves. Long story short, twice in my life, I was completely disowned and cut off. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that was a thing. Coming from being a very people-pleasing person that was conditioned my whole life to suit their feelings and their needs. And, and I think I talked before in one of our earlier episodes, it was almost like more of a court, like when you court somebody and you're over and above searching for that acceptance and love. And so it was disheartening. I didn't know this was a thing to be disowned. So it caused, and the last time this happened was recently with the pandemic in 2020. There was a lot of hurt. I was sad because this time around, my family was involved.
It was no longer just you.
It was no longer just me. It was my husband, and I have a 13-year-old child. So that, as a mother, was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, fast forward when, I started to have my spiritual awakening and things went on. Jen got her soul contract rating. I did mine. Obviously, I put on there my mother and father. So my soul contracts with them. My father's was pretty interesting because in a past life, it was said that the karma that we had was he has always struggled to understand me. And in a past life, it was kind of the same tone. She had said we have reincarnated together in various circumstances with this. And basically, what had happened in this past life was that my father had turned me over to, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but it was way back then. But basically, he turned me over, and as someone, she didn't say necessarily like witchy.
Witch trial. Yeah.
She didn't say witchy, but she was like, whatever it was unusual with you, she said that the things that I would say were it had that psychic tone to it, and it wasn't understood. So I was he turned me over and I was hung, and killed. So she says, when you have a circumstance like that, it creates karma, because you're put in this sudden position where you're not able to kind of deal with, oh my gosh, like,
my father just hanged me.
My father just hung me. What do I do with that? And so this lifetime around, the contract was we were clearing trauma. So here we are again. I just got goosebumps. Not understood, not, here we are again. But this time I'm claiming who I am.
You're being authentic.
I'm being who I am, and I'm coming out of the shadows. I'm coming out of the shadows. And, and for me, it's like, listen, people are going to look at you through their own lens. And their lens isn't going to be like your lens or their, this other person's lens. And we cannot account for everybody's lenses that they see us through. So what can we do? Be love, light, and be you. Be who you authentically are meant to be, despite... because you can't do anything about all of that. So for my soul contract with my father, that was that, and here we are. And if that wouldn't have happened, I would still be meek, overexert. Like I talked before, my career was
you
my
were stuck in that
abuse
pattern. Of where like they had control over you, and then you would, do their will type thing, and then I mean it's the same with like across the board of the with like domestic violence and everything like that abuse cycle of where you just get caught up into it. And I mean, them disowning you is a part of that as well, but that was like the biggest blessing ever. And it didn't feel like a blessing until
I started to understand. And for me, this soul contract, I was able to look at it from a different perspective. A different perspective of, instead of this being something that was done to me that broke me over and over again, instead this was something that I chose. I got goosebumps again. I chose this, to go through this lifetime so that I can empower myself.
Yeah.
And so I can come out from that. And so what happens with that? What happens if, I didn't, follow that? We talked about free will. You do have free will, and there are people that have these circumstances that they're meant karma to clear or whatever, and you do have free will. I could have very easily let this continue to control my life and make me weak. And then what does that do? That affects my husband. That affects my son. That affects my work. That affects everybody, and then heaven forbid, if I repeat this cycle and here we are again, trying to clear this karma, so that is why I find some peace of mind in soul contracts and in incarnation, and goes back to, I thank God for the opportunity to, help us along this journey and have these opportunities to, because goodness, what has come out of this? It's come out me feeling like a better person, being
rising
a
up from
better
those
wife,
ashes.
being,
Yep.
So, yeah.
It's good. And
you had a good example talking about, some of this too on what were you talking about?
for the next episode?
Yeah, that's actually in the next episode, something we want to talk about there. Can you tell I'm like chomping at the bit to talk about energy. So maybe, the next episode we're talking about,
So on episode 3, I got backwards there. In episode 3, we talk about light workers and energy shifting.
Yes.
So today we talked about soul contracts.
Penguin
Fun facts. If you want to learn more about soul contracts, Google it. Contact Kayla. We'll put her stuff up. You can always feel free to message us on Facebook or on Instagram, and we would either Cassandra or I will get back to you. If it's lengthy, you know that I was the one that was messaging you.
Yeah. Just kidding. If it sounds really intelligent, like it's straight out of a book, if I'm like, so it kind of went down like this. Yeah.
But so and what's the word? Come, little children. No, what's it? Hocus pocus. Come listen. Come join us. That was the word I was thinking of. Come join us for episode 3, where we talk about light workers, shadow workers, the balance, and energy shifting.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.